nearly a dozen new congresspeople came out calling for there to be a Palestinian speaker at the DNC. The one that people were talking about, and the one that Uncommitted had pitched, is a self-described as a state senator, and her name is she's from Georgia, Representative Ruwa Rahman, and she was pitched by Uncommitted. They have now released a draft of what her speech was going to be. I think it was Mother Jones that carried it.
Yes, I have the full link as well if we want to in the chat, Bradley.
Yeah, pop it up and let's read it, at least some of these remarks. The point being that she was, the remarks are fairly tame. They were 2 minutes. They were completely vetted. And at one point there was reporting that the Harris campaign said that they had agreed to allow her on. She's a Georgia state rep. They agreed to have her speak, but that Uncommitted turned it down. And then Uncommitted came out with their own press release and that's a lie. Rashida
Tlaib also said that that's untruthful as well.
Yep. And now the DNC is subsequently denying that they put out any such false claims. This is according to Mehdi Hassan's reporting. And so this has become, a really, to a large extent, a real failure, it seems to me, of, and ultimately, I would imagine this is a function of the Harris campaign, although the DNC is sort of like the cutout. But the list of people who are calling for this, for her to speak tonight: Keith Ellison, UAW, Maxwell Frost, who will be speaking a little bit later. Said that she should have been, or should be, I guess he said this afternoon, allowed to speak. AOC, Zooey Zephyr, Representative Zooey Zephyr.
Zoe from
Zoe, excuse me, Zephyr.
Is she a trans? She's trans, yes. That trans representative from Montana that we've featured her before, I think. Yeah.
Yep. Mayor of Chicago, even Jonathan Chase.
I know.
So
free speech, baby.
Representative Presley, Chewy Garcia, Chewy Garcia, Ro Khanna, Congresswoman Delia Ramirez. I think she'd already done that. Van Hoyle, Congressman Van Hoyle. Kazar of Texas says, in general, there should be a Palestinian American on stage. Congressman Loyal Doggett, who incidentally was the first person to call for Joe Biden to step down. Jayapal, Pocan, there may be a couple of more. But all of them came out with statements.
Jeremiah Ellison from Minneapolis, Keith Ellison's son, I believe, but don't quote me on that. But out of Minnesota said Rahman would be doing the Democrats a massive favor in addressing the DNC, not the other way around. And I think that is important to underline as well, because she's very pro Kamala Harris. Her speech was just going to be like, we need to beat Donald
Trump.
Trump.
Read it. Let's read it. Let's put it up there and take a look.
Is it easier for you or me?
Well, you can read it. I can read it as well. My name is Roa Rahman. I'm honored to be the first Palestinian elected to public office in the great state of Georgia and the first Palestinian to ever speak at the Democratic National Convention. My story begins in a small village near Jerusalem called Suba, where my dad's family is from. My mother's roots trace back to Al-Khalil or Hebron. My parents, born in Jordan, brought us to Georgia when I was 8, where I now live with my wonderful husband and our sweet pets. I lost it here. Growing up, my grandfather and I shared a special bond. He was my partner in mischief, whether it was sneaking me sweets from the bodega or slipping a 20 into my pocket with that familiar wink and smile. He was my rock, but he passed away a few years ago, never seeing Suba or any part of Palestine again. Not a day goes by that I don't miss him.
Can I pause for a sec just to point out that I would imagine that people in the DNC and maybe even some in the Harris campaign would object to even the word Palestine being said. They'll say Palestinian, but often they won't say Palestine. We just played an interview with Nancy Pelosi, and she stopped herself short of saying Palestine, where she said the Palestinians deserve to have a state. That's oftentimes
a country
language, right? Or not even state, a place of their own, I think she said.
Own, yeah.
Yep.
This past year has been especially hard. We've been moral witnesses to the massacres in Gaza. I've thought of him, wondering if this was the pain he knew too well. When we watched Palestinians displaced from one end of the Gaza Strip to the other, I wanted to ask him how he found the strength to walk all those miles decades ago and leave everything behind. But in this pain, I've also witnessed something profound, a beautiful multi-faith, multiracial, and multi-generational coalition rising from the despair within our Democratic Party. For 320 days, we've stood together, demanding to enforce our laws on friend and foe alike to reach a ceasefire, end the killing of Palestinians, free all the Israeli and Palestinian hostages, and to begin the difficult work of building a path to collective peace and safety. That's why we are here, members of this Democratic Party committed to equal rights and dignity for all. What we do here echoes around the world. They'll say, this is how it's always been, that nothing can change. But remember Fannie Lou Hamer, shunned for her courage, yet she paved the way for an integrated Democratic Party. Her legacy lives on. It's her example we follow. But we can't do it alone. This historic moment is full of promise, but only if we stand together. Our party's greatest strength has always been our ability to unite. Some see that as a weakness, but it's time we flex that strength. Let's commit each other to electing Vice President Harris and defeating Donald Trump, who uses my identity as a Palestinian as a slur. Let's fight for the policies long overdue, from restoring access to abortions to ensuring a living wage, to demanding an end to a reckless war and a ceasefire in Gaza. To those who doubt us, to the cynics and the naysayers, I say, yes, we can. Yes, we can be a Democratic Party that prioritizes funding our schools and hospitals, not for endless wars, that fights for an America that belongs to all of us, Black, brown, and white, Jews and Palestinians, all of us, like my grandfather taught me, together. That's the speech. And there are, I suppose, Palestine could be considered controversial. Palestinian hostages. But this stuff is controversial in the most right wing of circles. Yep. There was nothing in this speech that wasn't firmly planted right in the center of where, nearly Democratic stated policy, but certainly in terms of this speech is probably not even as close to the edge of where just mainstream Democratic public opinion is. And in terms of how aggressive, there's no call for conditioning aid to Israel, which is a majority held position within the Democratic Party, at least in terms of this Deb Haaland.
Yeah,
it is. Not that we need to get to her, but
I hear but exactly well said, Sam. Right? That should have been allowed.
This should have been allowed, and it's it's just basically a political error. And let's also be clear here: it's racism.
Yep.
At the end of the day, it's racism, because the idea that you're not going to allow this woman to go up on stage, who is clearly a Harris supporter, who is calling people to support Harris, who is in no way going against, she is a pledged delegate. I mean, there is no way that you can say she would be inconsistent with any of the speakers here. If we did not allow a Jewish person on stage because we weren't sure if they were going to say something to the effect of like, we need to have settlers in Gaza, people would be outraged. And so there is really no difference here. And I would argue that having settlers in Gaza is a far worse position than anything that someone can suppose that she would have said. Settlers in Gaza is aside from being immoral, clearly illegal. I mean, so they're
afraid of AIPAC. That's exactly what it is. They're being cowards about this, and I don't know what else to say. I mean, the most silver lining you can take from this is that the DNC is not just a representative of Harris as a presidential candidate. It also has to broadly represent the Democratic Party, and there's a lot of members of the Democratic Party who are quite close to the Israel lobby, and they would be raising hell about this kind of thing. I mean, you can read that piece in Slate that Alex Salmon wrote about, the Zionists coming together for Harris at the or for the Democrats at the DNC. There's that internal stuff too, but it's no excuse. I spent this afternoon calling Chuck Schumer's office, Nancy Pelosi's office, encouraging people to do the same. Other Hakeem Jeffries and Catherine Clark. I couldn't believe that even with someone like Jonathan Chait, apparently Elizabeth Warren said something to Harris privately, Haaretz was reporting, they didn't cave. So this is by far the most disappointing moment from this campaign so far.
Yeah, and it's real. I mean, it is honestly, I think, the first major political, just sheerly on political grounds, the first major political mistake that the Harris campaign has made, because it is going to. It doesn't end here. No. That's the point. It doesn't end here. Now, this would have been a good opportunity to show, at the very least, we recognize the humanity of Palestinian people.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.